The day Rose called me during my lunch break is something I'll remember forever. "Leon, I need to talk to you." Her voice was shaking. "It's about Cecilia." I was standing near the display window of the electronics store where I'd been working as a salesperson for 6 years. Sydney's July sun was beating down mercilessly, yet I felt a chill run down my spine. "What happened?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Rose was one of my wife's closest friends. They worked together at the Harborside View Hotel. The fact that she was calling me instead of Cecilia was already strange. "Not over the phone. Can we meet after your shift?" We agreed to meet at 6 in the evening at a cafe near my store. The next 4 hours dragged on endlessly. I consulted with customers, showed them laptops and smartphones, smiled and joked, but inside something was tightening more and more. I'm 33 years old, and Cecilia and I have been together for 8 years. We met at a bar where I went after a hard day at work. She had just moved to Sydney after divorcing her first husband, a story she didn't like to talk about. I only know that marriage lasted just 2 years and ended badly. She never told me the details, but I could see the pain in her eyes whenever the topic came up. That experience had clearly left scars on her, making her cautious about trust and commitment. We have 2 children, Robin, who's 6, and Sebastian, who's 4. We live in a cozy 3-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, nothing special, but was enough for us. I earned well for a salesperson, and Cecilia, as a hotel manager, also brought in a decent income. We were an ordinary middle-class family, the kind you see everywhere in Sydney. We had our routines, our little traditions, our shared dreams of maybe buying a house one day with a backyard for kids. Rose was sitting in the corner of the cafe, nervously twirling a cappuccino cup in her hands when I arrived. Her face was pale, and I could see she'd been crying recently. "I didn't know if I should tell you," she began when I sat down across from her. "But if it were me, I'd want to know." "Rose, you're scaring me." She took a deep breath, looked around the cafe, as if making sure no one could overhear us, then leaned forward. "Last week, there was a corporate party at the hotel. A closed party for staff and partners. Did Cecilia tell you about it?" I nodded. I remembered that evening well. I had an evening shift because the guy who was supposed to work got sick. The store manager called me in a panic, begging me to cover. Cecilia was disappointed that I couldn't go with her, but she didn't seem too upset about it. She kissed me goodbye, said she understood, and promised she wouldn't stay too late. "There was alcohol," Rose continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "A lot of alcohol. The management really went all out this year, open bar, expensive wine, cocktails. Cecilia drank more than usual. I tried to keep an eye on her, but at some point I lost sight of her." My throat went dry. I took a sip of water, but it didn't help. "And I saw her go into one of the rooms with Kent. He's a technician, works with us, responsible for air conditioning systems and electrical work. Leon, they were very close to each other. The way they were walking, the way he had his hand on her back, it wasn't just friendly. Maybe it just seemed that way to you?" I said, hating how desperate I sounded. Rose shook her head firmly. The next morning, I asked Samantha from reception. She saw them leaving the room together. At 2 in the morning. And Leon, Samantha said Cecilia's makeup was smudged, her hair was messy. There was no mistaking what had happened in that room. The world seemed to stop. I sat there staring at Rose, and one thought kept circling in my head. This couldn't have happened. Not to us. Not to Cecilia. We were happy, weren't we? We had plans, dreams, a family. How could she throw it all away for one night with some technician? "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I wasn't sure. I didn't want to destroy your family based on assumptions. But today I saw Ken approach Cecilia during lunch break. They were talking in the parking lot, and the way they looked at each other. Leon, it wasn't the look of colleagues who made a drunken mistake. There was something there, some kind of intimacy that made my skin crawl. I thanked her and drove home in some kind of fog. The traffic seemed to move in slow motion, the sounds were muffled, everything felt surreal. Cecilia was home, cooking dinner. The kitchen smelled of garlic and herbs. The children were watching cartoons in the living room, their laughter echoing through the apartment. Everything looked so normal, so familiar, so perfectly ordinary. "Hi, honey," she smiled, coming over to kiss me. "How was your day?" I smiled back, hugged her, inhaled the familiar scent of her perfume, the same one she'd been wearing since we started dating. And in that moment, I decided I wouldn't say anything. Not yet. Not until I was sure. Because maybe Rose was wrong. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Cecilia had helped a drunk colleague to a room and left. Maybe Samantha misunderstood what she saw. The next few days, I lived in some kind of parallel reality. During the day I worked, talked to customers, sold technology, discussed features and warranties as if nothing was wrong. In the evening I played with the children, had dinner with Cecilia, watched TV. We talked about ordinary things, Robin's school project, Sebastian's upcoming dentist appointment, whether we should finally fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom. And at night, I lay next to her thinking, is it true? Could she have done it? I knew I had to find out. But how? Follow her? Stage a scene? No, that would be foolish. My father once told me, if you want to know the truth, look for evidence, not confrontations. He himself went through a divorce when I was a teenager. My mother had been cheating on him for years, and he didn't want to believe it for a long time until he saw bank statements for hotel rooms, dinners for two at restaurants he'd never been to, gifts he'd never bought her. The evidence was undeniable, and it destroyed him. I remember him sitting at the kitchen table, those bank statements spread out in front of him, tears running down his face. I was blind, he kept saying. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. On Saturday, Cecilia went with the children to her sister's place outside the city. They were planning to spend the day there, maybe stay for dinner. I said I had to work on reports, needed the quiet apartment to focus. When they left, I stood at the window and watched their car disappear down the street. Then I took a deep breath and went into our bedroom. A feeling of guilt overwhelmed me immediately. I had never checked her things before, never looked through her phone or computer. We trusted each other, or we had trusted each other. Trust was the foundation we'd built our marriage on, and now I was about to violate that foundation. But I needed to know. The uncertainty was eating me alive. The password she hadn't changed, the date of our wedding. The laptop opened easily. I started with email. Nothing suspicious. Work emails, newsletters from stores, correspondence with friends about coffee dates and birthday parties. Then social media. Also nothing unusual. Posts about the kids, shares of recipes, comments on friends' photos. I was almost ready to give up, feeling both relieved and still uncertain, when I noticed a folder in downloads. Kent_project_files. My heart started beating faster. I clicked on it. There weren't any work files inside. There were photographs. Cecilia and some man. In a hotel room. At that same party Rose had told me about. In some photos, they were just sitting on the bed with glasses of wine, talking, smiling. In others, they were hugging, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. In the last photo, they were kissing, and her hand was tangled in his hair. I leaned back in my chair, feeling my hands trembling. So it was true. Rose hadn't been mistaken. This wasn't my imagination or paranoia. It was real, documented, undeniable. But the scariest thing wasn't that. The scariest thing was that I felt relief. Now I knew. Now I could act. The uncertainty had been torture, but certainty, even terrible certainty, was almost a comfort. I copied all the photos to a flash drive and hid it in my briefcase. Then I continued searching. In the message files, I found screenshots of correspondence between Cecilia and Kent. They started a week before the party. I can't stop thinking about you, he wrote. This is wrong, Kent. I'm married, she replied. But you're not happy. I see it in your eyes every day. It's not that simple. I have children, a family, responsibilities. Come to the party. We'll just talk. That's all, I promise. I don't know if that's a good idea. Please, just give me a chance to show you that you deserve more than what you have. And then after that night, I know we said it was just one time, but I can't pretend it didn't mean anything. Kent, we have to stop. This can never happen again. Then why did it happen at all? Because you wanted it too. Admit it. I don't know what I want anymore. I read and couldn't believe it. Did my wife write this? The mother of my children? The woman I planned to spend my whole life with? Each message felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Further down, the correspondence became shorter, more careful. We should stop messaging. Someone might see. I know, but I miss you. Kent, please. We both knew this was a mistake. A mistake that felt more right than anything has in years. Don't make this harder than it already is. I have a family. I have children who need their mother. And what about what you need? I need to do the right thing. Goodbye, Kent. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. And that was it. The last message was dated a week ago. It seemed they really had decided to end it. Or at least Cecilia had decided to end it, and Kent had reluctantly accepted. But did that change anything? The betrayal had still happened. The lies had still been told. The trust had still been shattered. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. When Cecilia returned with the children, I greeted them with a smile. I helped unload the car, asked how their day went, listened to Sebastian's excited story about their aunt's cat. Robin showed me the drawings she'd made. Everything was so painfully normal, and I played my part perfectly, hiding the storm raging inside me. "You're acting strange," Cecilia said when we went to bed. "Is everything okay?" "Just tired," I replied, my back to her. "Work is exhausting." She kissed me on the cheek and turned on her side. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about what to do next. The photographs and messages played on repeat in my mind. Her words, "I don't know what I want anymore." How long had she been feeling that way? How long had I been blind to her unhappiness? Over the next few days, I realized that what hurt me most wasn't the betrayal itself. If it had been a drunken mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment, maybe, just maybe, I could have forgiven that. People make mistakes. People drink too much and do things they regret. But the correspondence showed something else. She had thought about it. She had hesitated. She had known it was wrong. And she had done it anyway. And then she had decided to stay silent. Not to confess, not to apologize, not to give me the choice of whether to forgive or to leave. Just to pretend nothing had happened, to kiss me goodnight, to make love to me, to plan our future together, all while carrying this secret. I remembered her first marriage. She never told me the details, but once, when we had just started dating, and had perhaps had a little too much wine, she opened up slightly. Her first husband had cheated on her with a colleague. Cecilia found out by accident, finding messages on his phone. She said the worst part wasn't that he cheated, but that he continued to lie even after she found the evidence. He made excuses, blamed her for not being attentive enough, for working too much, for not understanding his needs. "I will never forgive lies," she had said that night, her eyes fierce with old pain. "Betrayal is one thing, but lying about it, making me doubt my own sanity, that's unforgivable. If someone can't be honest with me, then we have nothing." And now she was doing the same thing. The irony was almost painful. I started planning. Divorce seemed like the only way out, but I wanted to do everything right. Our children shouldn't suffer more than necessary. They were innocent in all this, and I was determined to protect them from as much pain as possible. The first thing I did was create a cryptocurrency wallet and started transferring part of my salary there. Not because I wanted to deceive anyone, but because I wanted to be confident in my future. In the children's future. I'd heard too many stories about divorce proceedings where one party ended up with nothing, unable to afford even a decent apartment to have the kids visit. I wasn't going to let that happen. Every paycheck, I put aside a portion in Bitcoin, carefully documenting everything in case I needed to prove later that this was my money, earned through my work. I also started consulting with a lawyer. Not officially, just asking a friend who specialized in family law about procedures and possible consequences. We'd gone to university together, and he owed me a favor from years ago when I'd helped him move apartments. "If she doesn't object, you can agree on everything peacefully," he explained over coffee one afternoon. "The apartment, custody of the children, alimony. The main thing is to keep calm and think about the children. Don't let anger drive your decisions because you'll have to co-parent with her for the next 12 years at least, until Sebastian turns 18. "What if I want to prove adultery? Will that help with custody?" He shook his head. "Australia has no-fault divorce. Adultery doesn't really matter in court unless you can prove it affects her ability to parent, which would be nearly impossible. Focus on being the best father you can be, document your involvement with the kids, and aim for a fair custody arrangement." But the hardest thing was coming home every day and pretending everything was normal. Hugging Cecilia, kissing her, lying next to her in bed. Sometimes I felt like I was going crazy. How could she not see it? How could she not sense that something had fundamentally changed between us? One evening she asked, "Leon, are you sure everything's okay? You've been so distant lately." I looked at her beautiful face, at her eyes full of concern, or was it guilt? Did she suspect that I knew? Was she waiting for me to confront her? "I'm just thinking a lot about our life," I said carefully. "About where we're headed." "And what conclusions have you reached?" She smiled, but there was tension in her voice. "I'm not sure yet." She reached out and took my hand. "Leon, if something's bothering you, you can tell me. We've always been able to talk about everything, haven't we?" The hypocrisy of it almost made me laugh. We could talk about everything? Except, apparently, the fact that she'd slept with another man. I know, I said, squeezing her hand briefly before pulling away. I just need some time to think. July was ending. Sydney was drowning in heat, and it seemed like everything around was freezing in place. I continued to work, spend time with the children, live my ordinary life. But inside something had changed forever. I looked at couples on the street and wondered how many of them were hiding secrets from each other. I listened to my colleagues at work talk about their wives and girlfriends and wondered if they really knew, the people they were with. One day I saw Kent. It was by accident. I went to pick up Cecilia after work because she needed to stop by the auto repair shop to get her car. He was leaving the hotel just as I was pulling up. An ordinary guy, about 28 years old. Jeans, t-shirt, bag over his shoulder. Nothing special. And that struck me most of all. Not some handsome man or successful businessman. Just an ordinary technician. What did she see in him? What did he offer that I didn't? He didn't even look my way. He got into his old sedan and drove off, completely unaware that the husband of the woman he'd slept with was watching him from across the parking lot. And Cecilia came out a few minutes later, smiling, looking perfectly put together in her manager's outfit. "Thank you for coming to get me," she said, getting into the car. "How was your day?" "Normal," I replied. "And yours?" "Usual. Lots of work, but nothing special. We had a complaint from a guest about noise from the room above, had to move them to a different floor." "Oh, and the new booking system is still giving us problems." I spent an hour on the phone with tech support. We drove to the auto shop, picked up her car, then stopped at the supermarket to buy groceries. She chatted about what to make for dinner, whether we should try that new recipe she'd seen online. Everything was so mundane, so ordinary. None of the passers-by could have guessed that our marriage was falling apart. That evening, when the children were already asleep, I decided it was time. "Cecilia, we need to talk." She looked up from her phone, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? She knew. On some level, she had to know that this moment was coming. "About what?" "About us." Something in my tone made her tense up. She put down her phone slowly, her hand trembling slightly. "Leon, you're scaring me." I sat down across from her at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd helped Robin with her homework, where we'd planned our vacations and our future. "I want a divorce." The silence was deafening. She stared at me, and I could see emotions changing in her eyes. Shock, incomprehension, fear, panic. What? Why? I don't understand. "Leon, where is this coming from? Do you really not understand?" I asked quietly. "Leon, if this is because I've been working a lot lately, I can cut back. I can talk to my manager about reducing my hours. I know I've been tired and maybe not as present as I should be, but we can work on this. We can go to couples therapy. We can." "This isn't about work." "Then what is it about? Talk to me. Whatever it is, we can fix it." I looked into her eyes, those eyes I'd looked into on our wedding day, when she promised to love and cherish me, to be faithful and true. "It's about Kent." She froze. All color drained from her face. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I watched her, this woman I'd loved for 8 years, as the realization hit her that I knew. That her secret was out. I can explain." She finally whispered. "Don't," I interrupted. "I know everything. About the party. About the room. About what happened after." "How did you?" She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Leon, it was a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. I'd had too much to drink, and he took advantage of the situation." "The messages show something different," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "They show that you didn't regret it. That you actually enjoyed the attention, maybe even wanted more." She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders starting to shake. I didn't know what to write. I was in shock. I felt so guilty, so confused. "Leon, I love you. I've always loved only you. That thing with Kent, it meant nothing. If you loved me, you wouldn't have slept with him. If you loved me, you would have confessed. You would have given me the choice of whether to forgive you or to leave. But instead, you decided to lie. To pretend nothing happened. To kiss me goodnight while carrying that secret. I wanted to tell you. So many times I wanted to tell you. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing our family. The kids, Leon. Think about Robin and Sebastian. They need both their parents." "They need honest parents," I said quietly. "They need parents who respect each other enough to tell the truth." Tears were streaming down her face now. It won't happen again. I swear on everything I hold dear. I've cut all contact with Kent. I've avoided him at work. I've done everything I can to make sure it never happens again. But it already happened, I said. And that's something I can't forget. Can't forgive. We talked until 3 in the morning. She begged, cried, promised it would never happen again. She told me that Kent meant nothing to her, that it was just a momentary lapse in judgment, a stupid mistake fueled by alcohol, and the flattering attention of a younger man. She said she'd been feeling old, feeling overlooked, feeling like she was just a mother and a manager, but not a woman anymore. And Kent had made her feel desired again, made her feel like she was still attractive, still worth pursuing. I know it sounds pathetic, she sobbed. I know it's not an excuse. But you have to understand, Leon. We've been together for 8 years. We have 2 kids. Our lives are work and childcare and paying bills and fixing things around the apartment. When was the last time you looked at me the way you used to? When was the last time we went on a date, just the 2 of us? When was the last time you made me feel like I was more than just your kid's mother? Her words stung because there was truth in them. We had fallen into a routine. Romance had taken a back seat to practicality. But that didn't justify what she'd done. So this is my fault? I asked. I drove you into another man's arms by being a responsible father and provider. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to explain how I got to that point. But you're right. There's no excuse. I made a choice. A terrible choice. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I had already made my decision. I don't want scenes, I said finally, exhaustion washing over me. I don't want to make this a drama. We'll agree on everything in a civilized manner. The children shouldn't suffer more than necessary. Leon, please. Cecilia, it's over. I can't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's no marriage. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. We continued living together, but already as strangers. We slept in different rooms. We talked only about necessary things, about the children, about bills, about household matters. The apartment that had once been filled with laughter and warmth now felt like a cold, empty shell. Robin asked why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room. I told her I'd been snoring and didn't want to keep Mommy awake. Sebastian was too young to notice much, but even he seemed quieter, as if sensing the tension in the air. The children felt that something was wrong, but we tried to hold ourselves together around them. We still had family dinners, still helped with homework, still read bedtime stories. But the warmth was gone, replaced by a careful politeness that felt more painful than anger would have been. Rose called me a few days after my conversation with Cecilia. I heard you're getting divorced, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I feel like this is partly my fault. Don't be sorry. You did the right thing by telling me. If you hadn't, I might never have known. I'd have gone on living a lie, thinking my marriage was solid when it was built on sand. Cecilia blames me. She says I destroyed your family by not minding my own business. It wasn't you who destroyed our family. It was her, when she made the choice to betray our vows. Rose was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, she really does seem broken up about it. She cries at work. She can barely focus. Yesterday, she made a major mistake with a booking that cost the hotel thousands of dollars. That's her burden to bear, I said, though hearing about her pain didn't bring me any satisfaction. I have my own pain to deal with. The lawyer helped us process all the documents. We agreed to split the property equally. We decided to sell the apartment and divide the money. Custody of the children would be joint. They would live with Cecilia, and I would take them on weekends and during vacations. It all seemed remarkably civilized on paper. No fights, no arguments. Just 2 former partners trying to cause as little pain as possible to their children. But inside I was dying. Every time I looked at Robin and Sebastian, I thought about how I was failing them. Not because of the divorce itself, but because I couldn't give them the intact family they deserved. They hadn't asked for any of this. They were innocent victims of their mother's choices and my inability to forgive. But the most interesting thing happened at the end of August. Cecilia came to me one evening when I was packing my things from the apartment. We'd found a buyer quickly, a young couple expecting their first child. They were excited about the place, talking about which room would be the nursery, where they'd put their furniture. It felt like watching someone else step into the life we'd built, and it hurt more than I expected. Can't quit the hotel, she said quietly, leaning against the doorframe of what used to be our bedroom. And I continued folding shirts into a box. He's moving to another city. He asked me to go with him. I looked up at her, surprised despite myself. And what did you say? No. Of course no. Leon, I never loved him. I don't know what it was, but it definitely wasn't love. It was stupidity, weakness, a moment of feeling desired by someone new. But it wasn't love. Then why did you do it? She shrugged, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Real confusion. Real lostness. Maybe I just wanted to feel young again. Or important. Or, I don't know. It sounds so foolish now. Like I threw away something real and precious for a fantasy that existed only in my head. Yes, I agreed. It does sound foolish. I destroyed everything, didn't I? Yes. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know you'll never forgive me. But I want you to know, I really do regret it. Every single day, I regret it. I wake up and for a moment I forget, and then I remember and it hits me all over again. What I had, what I lost, what I threw away for nothing. I believe you, I said honestly. But it doesn't change anything. The damage is done. You can't unbreak glass. You can glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. She flinched at the metaphor, but didn't argue. Will you ever be able to forgive me? Not to get back together, I know that's impossible. But just to let go of the anger? For your own peace. I thought about it. Maybe someday. But not now. Right now it's too fresh, too raw. I understand. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you're a good man, Leon. A good father. The best man I've ever known. And I'm so sorry I wasn't the woman you deserved. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, our bed, soon to belong to strangers, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger, the hurt, the sense of betrayal. But also the relief. Relief that I'd found out. Relief that I hadn't spent the rest of my life in ignorance. Relief that I could start over, build a new life based on truth rather than lies. September brought a new beginning. The apartment sold faster than we expected, and I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment nearby to be close to the children. Cecilia stayed in the same area too, finding a smaller place than what we'd had together. It was important to both of us that the kids didn't have to change schools, didn't have to leave their friends, didn't have to lose any more stability than they already had. Kent really did move away. I heard from Rose that he'd found work somewhere in Melbourne and hadn't appeared in Sydney since. Apparently, his pursuit of Cecilia had been more opportunistic than passionate. When she rejected him, when it became clear she wasn't going to leave her family for him, he'd cut his losses and moved on. I wondered if he felt any guilt about his role in destroying a family, or if he'd already forgotten about us, moved on to his next conquest. And Cecilia, she remained alone. Without me. Without Kent. Just her and the consequences of her actions. Rose told me she'd become withdrawn at work, no longer joining the other staff for after-work drinks or weekend activities. She went to work, came home to the kids, and that was it. Her social life had contracted to nothing. I didn't feel satisfaction from this. There was no joy in revenge because I hadn't planned any revenge. I'd just done what I thought was right for myself and the children. Staying in a marriage based on lies would have been worse for everyone in the long run. Robin and Sebastian would have grown up sensing the falseness between their parents, learning that love meant accepting betrayal, that marriage meant living with resentment. When everything was finished, when the documents were signed and the belongings divided, I sat in my new apartment and thought about what had happened. 8 years together. 2 children. Shared dreams, plans, hopes. And one night destroyed it all. Could have been different. Maybe. If Cecilia hadn't drunk too much that evening. If Kent hadn't taken advantage of the situation. If she had confessed immediately. If I had been more attentive to her needs, more romantic, less caught up in the daily grind of work and parenting. But everything happened exactly as it happened. And now we both lived with the consequences. The children adapted better than I expected. Robin sometimes asked why we no longer lived together, and I tried to explain as simply as possible. Sometimes grown-ups are better as friends than as husband and wife, I told her. And Mommy and I will always be your parents, even if we don't live in the same house anymore. Sebastian was too young to fully understand the situation, but he seemed happy enough as long as he had time with both of us. I returned to work with renewed energy. My manager offered me a promotion, the position of senior salesperson with the opportunity to train newcomers. I accepted. It felt good to have something to focus on besides my broken marriage, something to build toward. Life continued. Autumn came to Sydney, bringing cooler weather and shorter days. The kids went back to school after winter break. I established a routine, weekends with the children, weekdays focused on work, and slowly building a new life. One day in October, I ran into Samantha, that same girl from the hotel reception, at the supermarket. She was with her boyfriend, a tall guy with friendly eyes. "Hi, Leon," she said. "How are you?" "Fine. And you?" "Good too. Listen, I heard about you and Cecilia. I'm really sorry." "Thank you." She hesitated, then said, "She really is suffering. I see her every day at work. She's not at all who she was before. She barely smiles anymore. She's lost weight. Sometimes I hear her crying in the bathroom during her breaks." "That's her choice," I replied, though hearing about her pain didn't bring me any satisfaction. She made her decision, and now she's living with the consequences. Have you thought about giving her another chance? I mean, people make mistakes. Maybe with time. I shook my head firmly. No, I can't trust her again. And without trust there are no relationships. That's just how it is. Samantha nodded with understanding. "I get it. I probably would have done the same thing. It's just sad, You guys seem so perfect together." "We seem a lot of things," I said, "but appearances can be deceiving." Months passed. The new year came and went, 2026 arriving with fireworks over Sydney Harbor that I watched with the kids from my apartment balcony. The children grew. I adapted to the new life, solitary but peaceful. There was something to be said for knowing exactly where you stood, for not having to wonder what secrets were being kept from you. Cecilia tried several times to restore contact beyond just the necessary coordination about the children. She'd send messages telling me about her day, or something funny the kids had done. I responded politely but briefly, keeping firm boundaries. One day, she asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. Just to talk. "Like friends," she wrote. I declined. We couldn't be friends. Not after everything that had happened. Maybe someday, years from now, when the wounds had fully healed. But not now. Not when I still woke up some mornings and felt the familiar ache of betrayal. Sometimes I thought about whether I'd done the right thing. Was it too harsh to divorce over one mistake? After all, people make errors in judgment. She'd said she regretted it. Maybe I should have tried to forgive her, to rebuild what we'd had. But then I'd remember that correspondence. I don't regret it. I'd remember how she'd hidden it for weeks, kissing me goodnight while keeping her secret. I'd remember her words about her first husband, about how she could never forgive lies. And I'd know I'd done the right thing. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. When it disappears, nothing remains but empty rituals and forced smiles. In March, I turned 34. The children came to me for the weekend, and we had a small celebration. Sebastian drew me a card. Robin gave me a picture frame she'd made in art class at school. We ate pizza and ice cream cake and watched a movie together. "Dad, are you sad?" Robin asked that evening when I was tucking them into bed. "Why would you think that?" "I don't know. Sometimes you look sad. Like you're thinking about something that makes you unhappy." I hugged her close. "Sometimes I am sad. But when you're with me, I feel good. You and Sebastian make everything better. I love you, Dad. And I love you, sweetheart. More than anything in the world." Lying in bed that night after the kids were asleep, I thought about the future. About whether I'd ever be able to trust someone again. About whether I wanted another relationship. The idea of opening myself up to that kind of vulnerability again, of giving someone the power to hurt me like Cecilia had, was terrifying. For now, the answer was no. I needed time. Time to heal, to recover, to become whole again. Time to figure out who I was outside of being a husband, outside of that role I'd inhabited for 8 years. And Cecilia, she made her choice that night at the hotel. And now she lived with the consequences. Without Kent, who had fled at the first opportunity when she rejected him. Without me, whom she'd pushed away with her actions. She'd gambled everything on a moment of feeling desired, and she'd lost. This wasn't revenge. It was simply justice. Sometimes the punishment for our mistakes is simply having to live with what we've done. Life had taught me one important thing. We all bear responsibility for our decisions. And sometimes the hardest thing is living with the consequences of what we've done, watching the life we could have had slip away because of our own choices. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll be ready to trust again, to love again. Maybe I'll meet someone who understands that trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Someone who values honesty above all else. Or maybe I'll focus on being the best father I can be to Robin and Sebastian, giving them the stability and love they need to grow into good people. Maybe that will be enough. Only time will tell. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new, interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.